Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Millennium TV News. This is Fahmid Islam with you. Before moving on, let's look at today's top stories. US asks Australia to expand air cover into Syria. Iraq inquiry. Lord Morris says PM could pull plug on Chilcot inquiry. Peru approves shooting down of drug smuggling planes. Israel fires missiles into Syria after rocket attack. Greece crisis. Syriza rebels to form new Popular Unity Party. Well, those were the headlines, now the details. The request was reportedly sent to the Australian Embassy in Washington on Thursday. The government would say only that the request would be properly considered. The move would allow the Australian Air Force, already involved in airstrikes over Iraq, to pursue IS targets in Syria as well. Federal Treasurer Joe Hockey, who sits on Australia's National Security Committee, said IS did not recognize borders and Australia had an obligation to do what we can to stop them. The Australian newspaper reported that the US request included enhanced intelligence gathering, support for US and coalition fighter planes in Syrian airspace, and the potential for Australian airstrikes. The Australian Air Force has been bombing IS targets in Iraq for about 12 months. Government backbench MP and Chairman of Federal Parliament's Intelligence and Security Committee, Dan Tehan, has called on the government to broaden its commitment to fighting IS. Earlier this week, Australia's Chief of Joint Operations Command, Vice Admiral David Johnston, said the Air Force operated along the Syrian border but did not cross it. He played down any greater role for Australia, saying it would not be a game changer. Lord Morris of Aberystwyth said the inquiry committee was a disgrace for delaying its report and Parliament could vote to force it to publish. Chairman Sir John Chilcot has previously written to the PM to say he cannot set a timetable for publication. The independent inquiry was set up in 2009 and was meant to report in 2011. It was commissioned by the Labour government under Gordon Brown to investigate the background to UK involvement in the Iraq War, which began when Tony Blair was Prime Minister in 2003. British forces lost 179 personnel during the conflict, of whom 136 were killed in action. Tens of thousands of Iraqi civilians died during the conflict, and many were also killed later as a result of sectarian attacks and a violent insurgency. The Peruvian Congress has approved legislation that allows the country's air force to shoot down small planes suspected of carrying illegal drugs. Peru produces more cocaine than any other country, and anti-narcotics agents say most of it is smuggled to the US. The bill was passed unanimously 89-0 and is expected to be signed into law by President Ollanta Humala. However, officials say the US has expressed its opposition to restoring so-called aerial interdiction. Peru halted the tactic in 2001 after an American missionary and her infant daughter were killed in an attack on a plane wrongly identified as carrying drugs. The plane was brought down by the Peruvian Air Force, but it was a joint operation with the CIA. The US, which sponsors anti-drugs programs across South America, has opposed attacks on suspected drug planes since then. Other countries in the region, including Colombia, Brazil, Venezuela, and Bolivia, already permitted such planes to be shot down, albeit with strict guidelines. Officials in Peru say about half of the cocaine crossing its border is being taken via small planes to Bolivia. An Israeli aircraft has fired missiles at a building in Syria's Golan Heights in response to a rocket strike on an Israeli village, according to reports. Syrian state TV said several missiles had hit a transport center and public building in the Heights Quneitra area. Earlier, rockets landed near a village in northern Israel. There are no reports of injuries in either attack. Israeli officials blamed the rocket strike on the Palestinian group Islamic Jihad, which denied the claim. A statement released by the Israeli military said the rockets that hit the Upper Galilee region were launched from the Syrian Golan Heights by Islamic Jihad, sponsored by Iran. The statement went on to say that Israel holds the Syrian government responsible for attacks emanating from Syria. Islamic Jihad had previously threatened reprisals should one of its activists in Israeli detention, Mohammed Alan, died of a hunger strike, but Mr. Alan called off his fast on Wednesday after an Israeli court suspended his detention. Mr. Alan is believed to have suffered brain damage after going 65 days without food. Prime Minister and Syriza leader Alexis Tsipras stood down on Thursday, paving the way for new elections. The move came after he lost the support of many of his own MPs in a vote on the country's new bailout with European creditors earlier this month. Greek media reports say 25 rebel Syriza MPs will join the new party called Laiki Enotita Popular Unity. A list of MPs joining the party published by the Tane newspaper showed that the parliamentary speaker Zo Konstantopoulou and former finance minister Yanis Varoufakis were not among its members. Both had opposed a new bailout deal, with Ms. Konstantopoulou highly critical of her former ally Mr. Tsipras. The left-wing Syriza party won 149 seats in Greece's 300-seat parliament in the last election in January. The conservative New Democracy Party came second with 76 seats. In exchange for a new €86 billion, which is $95 billion and £61 billion from European partners, Mr. Tsipras had to agree to painful state sector cuts, including far-reaching pension reforms and keeping Greece in the Eurozone. We'll take a short break here with the headlines here. North Korea orders troops on war footing after exchanging fire with South. Islamic climate experts urge 1.5 degrees centigrade limit on warming. Bangkok bomb, 2 suspects cleared by police after questioning. China set to build floating oil terminal for Bangladesh. Novak Djokovic and Serena Williams progress at Cincinnati Masters. Welcome to Millennium TV News. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has ordered his frontline troops to be on a war footing, state media says, after an exchange of fire with the South across their heavily fortified border. The KCNA report said Mr. Kim declared a semi-state of war at an emergency meeting last Thursday. It threatened action unless Seoul ends its anti-Pyongyang border broadcasts. The North often uses fierce rhetoric when tensions rise, and it has made similar declarations before. The BBC South Korea correspondent Steve Evans says that although this ritual of aggression often sees such language escalate to the firing of ammunition, this time the rhetoric is fiercer and artillery shells are now in use. KCNA reported that Mr. Kim had ordered the troops be fully ready for any military operations at any time from 5 Friday local time, which is 8:30 GMT, at the emergency meeting of the Central Military Commission. An influential group of Islamic leaders has urged world governments to prevent human-caused climate change, forcing a global average temperatures more than 2 degrees centigrade above the pre-industrial level. In a radical advance on the position of most developed countries, the group says it would be better to aim for 1.5 degrees centigrade, the lower limit that many climate scientists say would offer a stronger chance of preventing climate change reaching dangerous levels, but to which few governments have so far agreed. The group's call, a long time in preparation, was issued at the end of the International Islamic Climate Change Symposium held in the Turkish city of Istanbul and is published as the Islamic Declaration on Global Climate Change. It is addressed primarily to the negotiators who will meet in Paris in December at the UN Climate Change Conference, the main aim of which will be to get agreement on a robust and enforceable global treaty to cut emissions of greenhouse gases in time to stay within the 2 degrees centigrade safety limit. 2 men identified as suspects in the Bangkok bombing have been cleared of involvement, police say. The pair were filmed by security cameras standing near the prime suspects in Monday's blast at the Irawan shrine, which killed 20 people. A police spokesman said they were now satisfied the men, a Chinese tourist and his Thai guide, were not involved. The main suspect remains at large, but authorities told the BBC they believe he is still in Thailand. Dozens of people were injured in the explosion, with some losing limbs. Police had said that at least 10 people were suspected of involvement in the attack and that their prime target was foreign. The 2 former suspects, wearing red and white T-shirts, were captured standing in front of the main suspect in yellow as he left his backpack under a bench at the scene. The footage led police to believe the pair may have been the attacker's accomplices, but one of the men met police and was released, according to police spokesman Prout Tavonsiri. Now the business news. Companies bidding for government contracts worth more than £10 million must show they have a reasonable proportion of apprentices. The greatest asset any employer has is their workforce, the Prime Minister said, and by investing in them, they are investing in the success and the future of their business. The government also reaffirmed plans for an apprenticeship levy, with large companies investing in a fund that is used to train workers. Skilled people are the lifeblood of a strong economy, but for too long, UK businesses have invested too little in developing their employees' skills to meet the demands of a competitive global market, said Skills Minister Nick Bowles. Bangladesh is set to sign a contract with a Chinese company next month to establish the country's first floating terminal in the Bay of Bengal to unload imported fuel oil, officials said yesterday. Energy Division officials said a state-owned Chinese company is to obtain a work order from the Bangladesh government to install the floating terminal, single-point mooring in the sea near Moheshkhali Island. The Energy Division requested the Planning Commission last week to approve the project worth 55.06 billion taka. State Minister for Power, Energy and Mineral Resources Nasrul Hamid wrote a letter to Planning Minister AHM Mustafa Kamal to approve the project urgently, said a senior Energy Division official. Viewers, now the sports news. Novak Djokovic came back from a double breakdown in the final set to beat Belgian David Goffin and reach the last 8 at the Cincinnati Masters. Goffin, ranked 14th, looked on course for victory at 3-0 in the decider, but world number 1 Djokovic took 6 straight games to win 6-4, 2-6 and 6-3. Britain's second seed Andy Murray takes on Bulgarian Grigor Dimitrov in the third round later on Thursday. Top seed Serena Williams beat Karen Knapp 6-0, 6-2 in the women's event. Switzerland's Belinda Bencic, who beat Williams on her way to winning the Toronto title last week, early retired with a right forearm injury when trailing Czech 7th seed Lucy Safarova with 6-2. 6th seed Anna Ivanovic beat Sloane Stephens for 2-6, 6-4 and 6-1, while there were also wins for Jelena Jankovic and Anna Carolina Shimidlova. In the men's draw, there was a win for 5th seed Stanislas Wawrinka, who beat Ivo Karlovic-Kroh with 6-7, 2-7, 7-6, 7-7, 7-6, 7-5 to set up a quarterfinal with Djokovic. 6th seed Thomas Berdych thrashed Tommy Roberto 6-0, 6-1 and will next face Alexander Dolgopolov, who beat Jerzy Janowicz at 6-3, 3-6 and 6-4. England's bowlers were made to toil on the opening day of the final Ashes Test as Australia lifted their hopes of a consolation win with an impressive batting display. Put it on to bat by England captain Alastair Cook, the tourists progressed to 287 for 3 at the Oval. David Warner scored 85 and Chris Rogers 43 as the openers put on 110 for Australia's first wicket. Captain Michael Clarke, who was given a guard of honour by the England team when he walked out to bat in his final test, could only make 15, but an unbroken century stand from Steve Smith 78 and Adam Vogt's 47 ensured the tourists were on top when bad light ended play. When Cook won the toss and chose to field on an overcast morning, he was no doubt hoping for a repeat of the past 2 tests at Edgbaston and Trent Bridge. There, England bowled out Australia for 136 and 60 respectively to take a 3-1 series lead and regain the Ashes with 1 test to spare, but with the pitch and weather doing little to assist England's bowlers. Australia were much more disciplined with the bat and negotiated the morning session without losing a wicket. Only 19 runs were scored in the first hour of play, but Warner and Rogers found their range either side of lunch to lay down a platform for a big score. Let's have a look at Millennium TV News Recap. US asks Australia to expand air cover into Syria. Iraq inquiry, Lord Morris says PM could pull plug on Chilcot inquiry. Peru approves shooting down of drug smuggling planes. Israel fires missiles into Syria after rocket attack. Greece crisis, Syriza rebels to form new Popular Unity Party. You are up to date with our top stories so far here on Millennium TV, and don't forget to log into www.millenniumtv.net. Thank you for staying with us. Allah Hafiz.